today we are replacing the oil filter adapter cooler assembly on a 2014 Jeep Wrangler Sport Unlimited. So that's the plan. The engine cover has already been removed. That what we didn't have to do. That is just a lift up and pull back, set it to the side, and next we're going to remove the air box components. Let's get started. My trusty assistant, Matt.
Yeah.
It's his Jeep, so he's helping out. Underneath the bottom of the air box line is a sensor wire that you have to make sure that you take off. The next step is we're going to start taking off the upper intake, and that's 8mm bolts, and then a couple of body clips in the back, which I have the tool here. So.
You gonna do the lower? You want me to do the upper ones while you do the lower ones, or you just have one set?
We'll just do one. We'll just follow them one at a time. Look at that. It even has the torque right here.
Written on the...
Yeah, 7 to 9 Newton meters. This off. Two plastic body clip. Oh, they're right here. These two clips right here. That foam will come out at a later time. We have 4 T20 bolts on the top of the upper intake, which are right back here, and here, and here, and there. These 4 20 T20 Torx, that one in the back, we're gonna have to take that rubber off because that rubber's in the way. Foam, not rubber. So that's
Foam rubber.
Foam rubber, there you go. Alright. So we got a 20.
Under the Jeep.
There you go. Back here, in the way back corner. Talking to a mechanic friend of mine at breakfast this morning. And they just had a guy come in for this exact same job. Parts and labor, $1,100. Okay, so we got the 4 Torx off. We removed the foam from the back. Now we got 2 10mm nuts right here that we need to take off on the driver's side. Right here, holding bracket on.
What bracket is that holding on?
That bracket is for just, it's a wiring loom bracket. I need to unplug the map sensor and remove the electrical clip on the bottom of it. So best little tools I've invested in.
Did I take this off too?
I believe so, yes. Electrical clip on the bottom of the throttle body housing, that's correct.
But
I'll be in the most
inconvenient spot.
Alright, I'm gonna take these bolts off this map sensor mount. Continue on while Matt tries to get that clip off. Sometimes these clips just don't want to cooperate.
Last thing I want to do is break it.
True. Alright.
That's not obvious. Or wasn't
Right.
obvious to me anyway.
And one more clip on here, holding this on. And just slide it off of there. Okay. Put this over here for safekeeping. Hang on.
Loose.
Yeah. So now we've got the map sensor off, the left connectors off, the nuts off below the map sensor. Use the body tool to remove the clips from the map sensor, did that. 2 bolts holding the wiring connector on the passenger side. That's why it wouldn't come off. We got these bolts right here on this wiring harness. I need an assistant more often. Alright, and now those 2 bolts are off. I know for a fact that now we need to loosen these 2 back here with these lines because it's on the same
Same thing. Or same
same
bracket.
Yep. Yeah, so the symptoms Matt's been seeing for what, a year?
Probably.
For a while. But it's just progressively getting worse, so now it's to the point where it has to be changed. This oil filter cooler assembly presents as a rear main seal leak because that's where the oil that's sitting in the valley down here, when you're driving, it swashes back and forth and ends up coming down the transfer in the bell housing, and it looks like a rear engine main seal leak. But
At first.
at first, and then because more oil pooled, then you go in and they're telling you, well,
Then it's a front seal.
now it's a front seal. So that was a key indicator that it was neither, and that it was the oil filter housing. Remove vent hose from the back. Right back here. It's just tight. Work it off. It's a squeeze, don't squeeze situation. Pliers are just for grip, but if you squeeze, you're not going to get it off. We pull towards the passenger side and up, we should be able to take the top, the intake, the upper intake off. So let's see if we can do that. There's a considerable amount of hoses and wires and whatnot in the way, so you got 2 clips right here wiring harness to what we're trying to remove, so that's not going to happen until we get these off. Alright, so that's the upper intake off.
Just remove the foam.
This is the foam covering the coil packs for the spark plugs. So now we got a T30 Torx. So say?
There's 4 of those.
So you got 2 here and 2 back here to remove the fuel rails. So they don't need to be cranked on.
Do we need to be careful about what falls into the manifold?
We do. What we'll do is once we get the lower off,
Take it.
we will use some, I think I've got some wide painter's tape. Yep.
Unplug the fuel injectors on the passenger side only.
Okay. And
You got your body tool? That may help if we pull that out. Get you a little room around that harness on the.
get that injector clip.
No, the injectors and or the O-rings may
And they
stay in the manifold when we remove the fuel rails.
Yeah. Right, because what we're going to do is we're going to take the fuel rails and flip it over to this side. So we've only got to unplug these, but it's unplugging them that's...
But only one fuel rail is actually coming completely off.
No, they're both coming completely out. We've got the clip pulled up. So once you pull this red clip up, which we've got a picture and I'll inset into the video so you can see it, you've got a little black tab right underneath the red, this red clip pulls up, and this black tab right here, you push down and then it pulls the injector connector off the injector. That's number 2 off. Working on this back one.
Look like movement.
Yeah.
It is.
Alright. I'm going to get the connectors out of the way so that we can pop the fuel rail off of the injectors, which may be pressurized, so if you get a little squirt of fuel, don't worry about it. One injector actually came out with, there's a slot in the fuel rail, so the injectors only go in the fuel rail one way. There's 2 slots on the side and the back. You can see the 3 slots, so they only go in one way. So, alright. Put the injector back in there. Again, what we're doing is we remove this passenger side fuel rail right here. Next, I'm gonna pop the injectors on the driver's side, and I'm gonna flop this whole thing over to the driver's side, so that we can take the lower intake off.
It shouldn't be a large surprise out of the fuel rails.
Right. So let's get this underneath here. And sit back over like that, out of the way. Okay. But it won't, so
Zip tie? You got a zip tie?
zip tie it out of the way. for me. Yeah.
You're there.
Take that. The lower intake.
10 mil sockets from 7 volts holding lower intake to the engine.
No, I'll tell you right now. They are T20 Torx. They're a millimeter socket, but they're not 10. So, curious of what it actually is. 8 millimeter. 8 millimeter socket or 20 Torx. Your preference. But I have a 20 Torx on the gun, wrench, ratchet. So that's what we use. Other than so far just being time consuming, this isn't such a bad job. I guess it would be if you weren't a mechanic and you really didn't. But the thing with doing videos like this is so that we can show people exactly how to do things, so you can save yourself $1,000 by just buying this oil filter cooler assembly housing for what?
$120 off Amazon.
$120 off Amazon.
Cause you had breakfast with a mechanic this morning, right?
That's right, I did. And that's what he told me. He said just had a Jeep come into the shop and it was $1,100 to do this. So that's a little bit out of most people's budgets. So these gaskets were $40 from any parts store. I got them from Advance Auto for $40 because you want to make sure you replace the intake upper and lower gaskets at the same time. So total job we're looking at $150 if you do it yourself, following these instructions, watching this video, taking your time. Very minimal tools. 8 millimeter socket, 10 millimeter socket, couple Torx, pair of pliers. It's just the time.
Body tool.
Yeah, that body tool is priceless. And how I got these steps was I watched 2 or 3 different people's videos doing it, and then I went on a couple of forums asking questions and getting torque specs and things of that nature so that I could have all of the information in this video.
Carefully remove the lower intake. Check additional wiring on the back of the manifold.
That's right, there is another wire on the back of the manifold. There's another clip. Got 2 clips you have to take off on the back.
Pull the injectors.
Yep. Pull the injectors off the driver's side. No, I'm just going to pull the injectors out. So let's get these injectors out of the way. Pull them up and back through the wiring so that they're not in the way of lifting the lower intake out. Alright. And that's the lower intake out. And there is the problem child, exactly. So, a little time consuming. We've been doing this for about hour and a half just to get to this point here. I'm going to get some tape up the intake ports so that nothing gets down inside there before we continue on. So what we did after, and when I say we, I mean Matt, did after we pulled the lower intake off was we vacuumed all the dirt that accumulated on the edges and cleaned it off with brake cleaner so that the surface where the gaskets sit is nice and clean, and then we covered it with tape. That's wide painter's tape, just so nothing goes back into the intake. We're going to loosen this filter housing and take it out, and then we're going to have to clean all the oil out of the valley and put it all back together. Oh, they're the outside Torx. That's what it is. I'll let you know what it is. It's a Torx E8. We have 5 bolts, 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and then 1 in the very front. There's also a torque specification and a pattern by which you're supposed to loosen. So you loosen the front one first, and then you loosen the back driver, then the front driver, and the back passenger, and then the back driver, and then the front passenger. And that's the same pattern you use when you torque them down as well. 2 plugs that we're going to have to disconnect in the back. One is for oil pressure sensor and oil temperature sensor wires. So now we're just unplugging those, taking them off. See the clip right here, I can remove this clip. Get this thing out of the way. A little more. Okay, now it's just, we should be okay. But there is the cooler line, there's a coolant line, because this is also oil cooler. There's a coolant line on the back, on the bottom, correct. And it's attached by one of those horrible clips.
Compression clips?
Yes. Alright, trying to. Now it's just finesse and wiggling it because it sits down inside. So it's just like when we're pulling out the injectors. Trying to lift up on this thing, and nothing's holding it in. Just the pressure of what it's seated into for how many years now?
6.
It'll come out. There it went. Alright. Now I'm going to be able to get to that clamp that's holding the cooler line on. Now that I've got this out and loose, and it just fits in between everything. So there's your clamp.
You need a bigger set of pliers. There you go.
There we go. All right. there is a ton of oil which doesn't look like it's very deep. Well, this is how deep it is. And there's sludge on the bottom. So there's 3 inches of oil and sludge in that valley from this thing leaking. So now we get to clean all that out. So you want to explain the vacuum? So we came up with a unique technique to get all of the oil and the sludge. I took my shop vac and duct taped probably some hose, which probably inside diameter was about, what's it say, 3/16?
5/16.
5/16 inside diameter, a hose to the end of my vacuum, and literally just vacuumed it all out. It worked perfectly. So there's no sludge down in the bottom of there now, and it's all clean. And then we cleaned off the top of all of the inlets where these rubber seals are going to sit, so they have a nice clean surface to sit in. Everything's good. Now we're just putting them back together. I put the coolant line back on first, and plug those 2 electrical wires in for the sensor and the temperature, and then pop it back in, torque it down, and we're just basically putting everything back together now in the reverse order from what we took it apart. And be careful of this line because it does have water in it. There we go. It's on. Alright. Anyway, you know what's hard to lean against? And
Something that gives.
the alternator is not comfortable. Alright, 2 wires. Both very distinctive plugs, so you can't get them confused. Hardest part to get out and to get in.
Take it back a little too.
Now there's a big hole. There, grab that old one. I want to show everybody what the issue is right now. So this right here, this inlet with an O-ring on the front side is what held us up taking it out, and what's being a pain to put back in. Okay, just working it down. Okay. Oh.
So the screw should help you get it set, right?
It's, yes. Always do things finger tight first to get those threads started, because if you don't, you have a good chance of cross threading it if you're just going to use a wrench. Everything's in. We're just torquing torquing it down to 106 inch-pounds. And like I said, in the proper sequence, driver's side, back, driver's side front, passenger side, back, passenger side front, all the way to the front. You definitely don't want to over torque them. That's recipe for failure. All this work, you don't want to mess it up by improperly torquing it. Alright. We've got the tape off, and we have replaced the old gaskets, upper and lower gaskets, with new ones. And now we're just going to put it back together. We'll be back when we crank it up. Okay, Jeepers, it is back together, and it went back together, as Matt said, so much faster than it did taking it apart. So we were even careful. We torqued everything down, proper torque specifications on the fuel rails, the lower intake, the upper intake, the electrical bracket, everything has its correct torque. So we are about to crank it up. See what happens. Wow. There you have it. A successful oil filter cooler housing replacement. So if you have a puddle of oil underneath your Jeep, maybe not this bad, but even drips and drops, you know, enough to notice.
Coming down both sides of
Coming down both sides of the bell housing, or coming down the front. Please don't just assume it's the rear main seal. It very well could be, because it's a known problem as well. But check the oil filter area, and if there's oil laying in that valley, then you know where the problem's coming from. We're going to wrap this up. We'll see you guys later. Peace out.